For decades, big tech was the ultimate symbol of freedom. Innovation without limits, disruption without permission, and growth without boundaries. The companies that defined the internet age, Google, Apple, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, weren't just shaping markets, they were shaping society. But now, that era of unchecked dominance is facing its biggest test yet. From Washington to Brussels to Beijing, governments are finally stepping in. AI laws, data privacy mandates, antitrust cases, content rules, tax battles. The message is clear. Big tech's power is no longer invisible, and regulators want it back under control. The question is, can they actually do it? Or has big tech become so essential, so embedded in the fabric of the global economy, that it's now bigger than regulation itself? Let's find out who really sets the rules for tomorrow. To understand the standoff, you have to realize just how deep big tech's reach has become. It's not just about products or apps anymore. It's infrastructure. Amazon runs half the internet through AWS. Microsoft powers both corporate America and government agencies through Azure and Office 365. Google controls the gateways to information, education, and advertising. Apple dominates the hardware that connects billions of people. Meta owns social spaces that define communication itself. These aren't companies anymore. They're systems. And that's what's making regulators nervous. Because when private systems start functioning like public utilities, who's really in charge? The elected government or the corporations that hold the data, the platforms, and the algorithms? Let's start with the US, where the battle lines are getting clearer. After years of political gridlock, Washington has shifted from admiration to confrontation. The Federal Trade Commission is suing Amazon for monopolistic practices. The Department of Justice is taking Google to court over its ad dominance. Lawmakers are drafting AI safety frameworks aimed at OpenAI, Microsoft, and Anthropic. It's the most aggressive regulatory wave since the breakup of AT&T. Only this time, the stakes are global. But there's a catch. Big tech has something no industry in history ever had: leverage over the government itself. They run cloud systems that host federal data. They manage communications networks used by Congress and military agencies. They employ lobbyists who shape the very language of the laws meant to regulate them. So while Washington is trying to restrain big tech, it's also deeply dependent on it, a paradox that makes real reform almost impossible. Across the Atlantic, Europe is taking a different approach, slower, stricter, and more philosophical. The EU's new Digital Markets Act and AI Act are rewriting the global rulebook for how tech companies operate. They force transparency in algorithms. They ban self-preferencing on digital platforms. They demand clear labeling for AI-generated content. And they give regulators the power to fine companies up to 10% of global revenue for non-compliance. To Silicon Valley, it's overreach. To Brussels, it's balance. Europe's message is simple. Technology should serve society, not dominate it. And while many complain that the rules are heavy-handed, they're setting global precedents that even US firms must follow if they want access to European markets. That's soft power through regulation, and Europe is quietly winning it. Meanwhile, China has taken regulation in the opposite direction: control through alignment. Instead of letting big tech grow independently, Beijing has made sure its tech giants, Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu, operate as extensions of state goals. AI development, e-commerce, and social media are all monitored and guided to support national priorities. Innovation is encouraged, but always within the limits of political loyalty. For the West, that model looks restrictive, but for China, it's stability, ensuring that no private company can challenge government authority. And that's a lesson US regulators are watching closely. What happens when tech power and state power stop being separate things? So, what about AI regulation, the newest and most urgent frontier? Governments worldwide are scrambling to write laws for technologies they barely understand. How should we handle AI bias? Who's liable for misinformation generated by machines? Should companies be allowed to train models on copyrighted data? The challenge is that innovation is moving faster than legislation. By the time a law passes, the technology it targets has already evolved. That's why companies like OpenAI and Google are volunteering to self-regulate, releasing ethical frameworks, building safety boards, and promising transparency. But here's the truth. Self-regulation is still control. It lets companies set the rules before governments do, and influence public perception while they're at it. It's not regulation versus freedom. It's regulation versus who gets to write it first. And that's where big tech's real power lies. Not just in lobbying or size, but in speed. Governments move in years. Tech moves in quarters. Every time regulators catch up, innovation leaps ahead. By the time a rule book is written for social media, we've already moved on to generative AI, quantum computing, or immersive environments. That speed difference means big tech isn't just playing by the rules, it's designing the playing field. They can afford to adapt faster, experiment earlier, and, when necessary, apologize later. It's a strategy that turns regulation into a moving target. But let's not pretend governments are powerless. Public sentiment is shifting. Consumers are tired of privacy invasions, data tracking, and digital addiction. Politicians are realizing that tech's dominance isn't just economic, it's cultural, even psychological. That's why we're seeing bipartisan support in the US for AI accountability and child protection laws. It's why Europe is doubling down on digital rights. And it's why countries like India are building their own independent tech ecosystems to avoid dependency on US giants. The next frontier of regulation won't just be about money. It'll be about values. Who decides what's ethical? What's private? What's fair? Those questions don't have technical answers. They have political ones. And that means the era of move fast and break things is finally meeting its limit. So who really sets the rules for tomorrow? Right now, it's a standoff, a tug of war between governments trying to reassert control and corporations powerful enough to shape the terms of that control. Big tech still has the advantage: money, data, and speed. But regulators have something just as powerful: time and public pressure. Eventually, every empire, even digital ones, meets accountability. The only question is whether that accountability will come through thoughtful policy or through the crash that happens when innovation outruns its own guardrails. Big tech may be designing the tools of the future, but governments and the public they serve will decide what that future is allowed to become. Because technology might write the code, but society still writes the rules.